Hi, I'm Elsbeth Magilton. I am the Director of Externships at the University of Nebraska, and I'm so excited to be a part of the CLIA video project for externship supervisors. My role today is to talk a little bit more about the very beginning of the semester and goal setting with your externship student, together with the professor that they might be working with at their institution. So contextually, I kind of want to set the stage that when we think about externships, we need to think about self-leadership. These experiences are designed to be self-led educational experiences for our students. And while the supervisors and the professors guide and mentor them, they're ultimately responsible for their own learning throughout the experience, just like you are, and they will be when they're professionals and junior attorneys thinking about how to develop their skills. Goal setting can really help them provide direction and focus to how they ask for tasks and then in evaluating themselves and in their performance. I think it's important, though, to talk about some of the pitfalls of goal setting and things that we see that make sure that you can help your students avoid it and set positive, helpful goals. So one of the first ones is the too big goal. We see this a lot. Students tend to think of goals as these huge life-altering events, and they simply don't need to be. Talking to them about what is truly achievable in this particular amount of time and makes the most sense for them. Another one that we see often are the vague goals. So a student might set a goal like to get better at research or be useful. The intent of those things are good, but it's hard for them to determine if they were successful. They may or may not be receiving feedback from a supervisor or peers that they work with that would help them measure this. It's important that they're able to, on their own, be able to look and say, I did this or I didn't do this, and here's why, and have that feedback loop for themselves. Another one, and this is kind of similar to those two big goals, is the overly ambitious goals that I want to work 30 hours every week, or I'm going to write a law review article on every topic I do a memo on. I really did have a student tell me that in a class. I love the overly ambitious goals for their spirit, but sometimes they turn into discouraging goals because they're so difficult to reach. It's important that we help the students stay practical in what can really be achieved in 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 10 weeks, 15 weeks, and set goals that they can actually reach. So then, how should we set goals? Well, we have some good best practices, and I want to share with you the process that I use and that I know many of my peers across the country are using in their classrooms as well. So the first thing we ask our students to do is an honest self-assessment. We use things like Gallup strengths or the Schultz and Zedek lawyering factors. Those are two faculty members from UC Berkeley that did a lot of research on what sort of skills and traits a lawyer might need, and you can find those assessments online. I also think it's okay to meet the students where they are. If they have an assessment tool that they like, Enneagram, whatever, you can meet them where they are and talk about, tell us what that means about your strengths and what you prefer to do and what you want to work on. Most externship programs also have some form of an educational goals and planning form. Setting the educational objectives for the student is part of our ABA compliance, and thinking about how we ensure that they're doing some work that merits being for credit. And so my form, and I think many others, one of the things that I do is ask for at least 3 goals, but not just the goal, but some methods for how they're going to work towards that goal. So tell me what you want to do and tell me how you're planning to do it. I also ask them to tell us what are their strengths and what are the best skills that they're bringing to the table, and how can we help them flex those and further develop what they're already really comfortable with or good at. And then I ask them what areas they're concerned about or nervous about. That way we know that we might need to provide extra support when we get to those areas. Next, we look at those goals. In my classroom, we do this together in partners after we've turned in those educational planning forms. But we ask students to do this, whether it's independently or together in the classroom. Are their goals SMART? And that is, of course, an acronym for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And we'll dive into those just a little bit more. So specific. This helps us kind of avoid some of those too big goals or those vague goals. We will sometimes have students write something like, I want to get better at communication. It's pretty broad and it's really hard to measure that, right? So let's get more specific. We'll ask some clarifying questions when I'm given an assignment to ensure I understand what and why and when something is expected of me. Or often students are nervous about networking or report that they don't really know how to do it. So I tell them, set a goal to challenge yourself to do it. It's a muscle like anything else. Get out there, right? So you might make that goal more specific by saying, I will attend the firm's weekly happy hour at least twice a month, or I will join the Bar Association's coffee hour program and attend at least 3. And they can measure it. Which brings us to measurable. Not measurable, and as an example, would be something like, I want to get better at receiving feedback. Rather, they could measure by saying, when I am given an assignment, I will schedule a follow-up after the due date to ensure there is time set aside to discuss my performance, right? They can measure it. Did they do that? And did the meeting happen? Goals also need to be achievable. Goals should be able to be accomplished in the time given or practical. A good example of this was that I recently had a senior certified student submit their goal to argue a jury trial that semester. Now, of course, I supported them in that and I wanted them to have that opportunity, but in some situations, a student might not be given that opportunity just based on the quick cases that are available to them. So we don't want to miss our goals just based on chance or luck. The goal should be attainable. And so in this particular example, I had that student rethink about, okay, if a jury trial doesn't happen, I'm going to set aside time to do an informational interview with my supervisor about the last jury trial that she argued, or I'm going to work on a memo outlining what it's like to prepare for a jury trial. So there might be other ways to try and expand that experience or learn that through the placement, even if the super precise objective isn't always going to be 100% achievable. They have to be relevant. Students should set goals that are relevant to their work, right? So if you're working at a housing justice nonprofit, it shouldn't be to get more experience, say, drafting jury instructions or something that maybe is not coming up as frequently in the type of courtrooms that you're working in. This one often surprises supervisors that they might see students not setting relevant goals. And what is usually an indicator to me is that the students just don't know what they don't know yet. So they might be in an office setting where they just don't understand necessarily all the types of work. So it's a wonderful opportunity to engage with them, to give them some more context to the workplace and explain why maybe that goal isn't relevant. And we set goals at the starting line. So we need to know where the finish line is. Goals need to be time bound. It should not be an endless goal that they're looking at for the rest of their lives. These goals should be very specific to the time period of their externship. We check in with each other. So after they have set these SMART goals, they've gone through each of them, they've checked them with the other students, they work to refine them, pass that SMART test, and then they get to work. So we always ask them to do those check-ins. And now you'll hear from Megan Bess, my partner for the goal setting videos, in video number 2.